Hey, just recording on my way to work. Basically, I just wanted to bring up a little point Joe Rogan might be missing as far as the whole Sphinx, the age of the Sphinx. I know he had a bunch of podcasts where people go over it, and somewhere there's one where he debates it between three people plus himself. And the question always comes up is why does no one believe it? Why is it that the community is against this older age Sphinx idea? Basically, a huge piece of the puzzle that no one mentions, or I've watched a lot of podcasts, I've never heard any of them mention it even once, is that there's not that many Egyptologists in the world. There's really not. Less than 1 million. It might even be 500,000. And these are people who, and there's just not a ton of money that people pay to like institutions to say Egypt. It was one culture. It might have been a very important culture, but they've got to spend money on other things. A PhD professor paying to study Egypt. Well, instead you could pay a PhD professor to do research for your school and bring in patents and lots of money. Anyways, the point being is that most of the Egyptologists actually live in Egypt. And the issue is that a ton of people in Egypt are Muslim. And not to say anything bad about Muslims, but they do believe that the world started 8,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago. And so when you bring up a theory that perhaps the Sphinx is 12,000 years old, a lot of them are much less interested in something like that, simply because it kind of conflicts with their religion. And on top of that, you have this issue of access, that a huge part of what frustrates a lot of the Egyptologists who go on Joe Rogan's podcast is that, like Graham Hancock, is that they can't really get as much access as they'd like to the Sphinx. They're very limited in what the government allows them to do because it's a historical relic or a historical monument. However, another part of that is that a lot of the politicians are less scientifically inclined. Think of our politicians in the US, and they're more religiously inclined, and they also don't want to fund research saying that the Sphinx might overturn their religion. I'm just thinking of the United States. There's not a ton of money. There's not a ton of fundamentalist conservatives studying evolution within universities, stuff like that. And there'd be a lot of pushback if you suggested something like this, something that would radically overturn the way we see the world about anything, right? Like if you were really pushing to have a revisionist history of the Civil War, of World War II, something like that. I'm sure, like, oh, actually, we didn't need to go to World War II. It was a total waste of money, lives, and treasure as far as the U.S. is concerned. Then, there'd be a lot of pushback because it just goes against one of the fundamental narratives of our country. Anyways, just that politicians are kind of less scientifically inclined, and there's actually pushback. So if a politician is, if someone says a politician is, going against Muslims or overturning Muslim religion, as secular as Egypt is, there's still going to be electoral consequences for supporting that line of inquiry. Anyways, just wanted to bring it up. It might be helpful when you're looking into why there's all this evidence that the Sphinx is much older, and yet these people, some have spent decades trying to prove this out and have gotten very little traction. It's basically because a ton of the people in Egypt are Muslim, and it goes against their narrative, and very religious Muslim. It really is kind of like the more religious right in this country. But because you have to deal with politicians as well, who often are less scientifically inclined and be more religiously inclined, and also have to deal with a voter base that is more religiously inclined than as a group of scientists would be. Anyways, thanks for watching. Have a great day. I hope this is helpful. Maybe it's not, but have a great day.